Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about this question: how to parent in the modern day. So this was the message I received. Hi Arnav, I know you may not be in this part of your life yet, but I am a parent of 3 young children, all under 14, and I'm curious, as someone who's in their late 20s, who's experienced becoming an adult in the modern era of social media and smartphones, any advice for parenting young children? This is a great question. Obviously, parenting is a broad subject, so there's a lot that can be said. But I think my first piece of advice would be for you as a parent to provide emotional stability and self-esteem to your children. In my estimation, many of the world's problems with regards to adults who are having difficulty in certain aspects of their life or are, doing things that are not for the social good, i.e. committing crimes, they can often be correlated back to emotional wounds from their childhood / teenage years, from their experiences in school or with their family. From 0 to 18, I think it's safe to say most of your time is either spent in school or with your family. And a big phrase psychologists now say all the time is that many young adults are having to work on healing their inner child as they grow up. So, as a parent, you control the family part, and you can also monitor the school part by having, an open, honest, and good communication with your child. So, for me, the thing that I would reflect on if I were you is I would look at the way you and your partner conduct yourself, the way your extended family conducts themselves, and monitor how teachers and / your children's classmates are, conducting themselves, and create an environment where your child feels comfortable communicating all things going on, both good and bad, and they're not hiding anything. I think it's hard enough as a kid to consistently get better each day, but it becomes infinitely harder when emotional instability is affecting them as well. This is just a basic example, but why does a kid, who has family problems at home, maybe perform worse in grades or maybe have more absentee issues at school than a kid who doesn't have any family problems going on? And a lot of that can probably be brought back to the emotional instability that the problems at home affecting the performance in school. I remember listening to a Kobe Bryant interview once. Kobe is a famous basketball player that passed away, and he talks about the story with him and his father. I think at the time he was like 12 years old, and Kobe played in a basketball game where he didn't score, and after the game, he's thinking, oh, my dad's gonna chew me out and for not scoring. Instead, he was surprised, as he dejectedly went to his dad. His dad said, "Son, whether you score 60 points or you score 0 points, I'll always love you. Never doubt that." And Kobe remarks that created a lot of confidence in him as a young kid, because feeling that love really helped him as an individual, and he could just focus on improving in basketball. All this to say, I think if you create a child or teenager that loves themselves, has self-respect for themselves, knows their value, knows they're loved, that's going to be one heck of an adult. The second thing I would say is let them make mistakes. As a parent, naturally you want them to have the easiest path possible, and you want to provide your guidance to prevent, mistakes and failures as much as possible. And, I think there is a fair amount where you should guide them. But at the end of the day, especially, after 18 or 22, they're on their own, and they need to be able to think on their own, make decisions on their own. And mistakes and disappointments are a part of life. I think there's many famous sayings, but one of them, it's not a matter of whether you will get knocked down in life. You will get knocked down. What really determines your character is how you respond to that adversity. Much like you made mistakes as a kid, your kid will make mistakes too, and they'll have disappointments. And, it's not those disappointments necessarily that will define them. It's how they respond to them that will. And, developing that grit and developing that ability to bounce back is a major key in life as an adult. I think the third thing that I would say is your job is to accelerate their dreams and passions, not yours. I think a lot of parents can unknowingly feel like they want to use their child for the dreams that they didn't accomplish, or they want to mold their child in the way they see as best, in the society that the child is growing up in. The reality is, your child will most likely have, different passions and dreams than what you hope for, and maybe the career that you think is best. And I think rather than imprinting your vision of how they should live their life, let them figure out their passion points and desires, and really give them the confidence to accelerate those and encourage them to be the best version of themselves in that particular field. The fourth thing I would say is don't wrap your self-esteem in them. I think a big thing parents do is, wrapping their own self-esteem with their child. And, I think that's a symptom of the comparison game. You always want to be able to brag about your child at family gatherings or when you see friends of yours. But, at the end of the day, that's wrong, because we shouldn't be defining our self-worth based on our career. And that's, maybe another whole different conversation for a different time. But, the bigger picture is you have to realize that you and your child are separate entities. Certainly, as I've said before, from 0 to 18, they are a significant reflection of your parenting. But after 18, in many ways, your child is more a reflection of themselves, their thinking, their habits, and their actions, and not yours. And in many ways, you shouldn't wrap your self-esteem in them. Your self-esteem needs to be wrapped up in your life, what you controlled, how you lived your life, and, to the best of your ability, how you've parented. But ultimately, they determine their future with their actions. And the final thing I'll say, in terms of the modern day stuff that you referred to, like video games, social media, again, to me, it's really about teaching them to create healthy relationships with them and not hiding them from it. With regards to social media and smartphones, there's a certain amount that you can influence as a parent and maybe limit. for example, saying no social media until you're 14 or something like that. Um, and that's definitely something you can do. The reality is, though, that they will have to live in the modern world no matter how much you try to shield them from, something that's inevitably going to affect them. Um, so, in my estimation, I think it's better to teach them to create healthy relationships with things like social media. Teaching them, for example, let's limit social media to 15 minutes a day. Let's also remember that people are showcasing their best lives, and let's not get into comparison traps. Just let's not get into places where we're like, my life sucks because it seems like everybody else is bragging about doing much cooler things than me. Those skills, if you can teach those skills, that can go a long way. They will be on social media at some point in some form. It will affect them. But those skills that you teach them are valuable. Instead of them spending 2 hours a day on social media, spending 15 to 30 is maybe a lot healthier for them. And then again, there's a certain amount you have to embrace, just with society changing. When you were growing up, it probably wasn't a thing for someone to become a full-time content creator as a teenager, outside of maybe child actors. Today that's much bigger part of society. Social media influencing is a career, and there are children with YouTube channels and stuff like that. In terms of video games, esports video gaming is now a career. Again, these things are a career path for a small percentage of individuals, and I'm not saying that any of them are easy. It's hard work, and it might take years, but I think again, in thinking about your child figuring their own passions out in social media or video games or whatever, that might be their path. Certainly there are many people around the world making their full-time career out of those two. So those are kind of the 5 pieces of advice that come to mind today in terms of parenting a child in the modern day. Feel free to give me any feedback on any topics maybe I didn't cover. And yeah, thank you for the question.